Let me get started. Okay, so welcome everybody. We're going to discuss a few things about the Megillah. So I'm just going to something up. Okay, so we're going to try and look at I think everyone knows the general story, right? We all know the general story. How I might as well, I guess we'll summarize it. The general story. Then we're going to try and go into some details that perhaps aren't as well known. Okay, so we know. Actually, we'll go back a whole step. We'll go back a whole step. And gonna share. So I'm just going to share a document. I apologize. No, we'll go over the story. So anyway, it started off. We'll go back a few steps. So we have Nebuchadnezzar became the king of Babel. So he conquered Israel. And at that time, there was a prophecy that after 70 years, the exile is going to end. So everyone, including the Jews, presumed that when did the 70 years start from? From when we first got conquered. First got conquered by Nebuchadnezzar. That was what everyone presumed. We're going to see soon that they realized they made a mistake. So then they made another presumption. When did the 70 years end? When Nebuchadnezzar came back a second time and took the king and other people, a whole group of leading Jewish scholars, into exile. That must be when. And of course, we're going to see that was an error as well. And what happened? When was the 70 years counter from? Was from the actual destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, which was the third time Nebuchadnezzar came and conquered us. Right, so he came 3 times. So at the first time, we all thought that was from the first time we were conquered. 7 years after that, Nebuchadnezzar's grandson, Belshazzar, he made a big feast. He made a party to celebrate. Right? He wore the clothes of the Kohen Gadol. So he put out the kalim, of the Beis Hamikdash. Achashverosh wore the clothes of Kohen Gadol, but he put out the kalim and the vessels from the Beis Hamikdash. And there's a famous story of the writing on the wall. Right? There was a message. No one could read it. It was written in the script, like Sefer Torah is.
Men tekel paris.
Right. So the question is, he even asked the Jewish scholars, well, and they couldn't read it either because it was written in a code, as we just had shared with us, right? So, but Daniel was able to explain what it means. Anyway, Belshazzar died that night, and the Persians and the Medes took over. This now the third ruler of the Persians and the Medes, who married Belshazzar's daughter Vashti. Achashverosh was king. The whole story was over 9 years, but Achashverosh was king of 14 years. And the third year of his rule is now 70 years from the second conquest of Nebuchadnezzar. So they saw that the first conquest was not the 7 years. So it's now, it must have been the second one. And now he wants to celebrate because that's it. The Jews have not been redeemed. The prophecy is incorrect. And of course, when Achashverosh makes a party, he doesn't do it in half measures. All right. So he makes a party 180 days. Right? Straight. Pretty good party. And then, of course, we all know at the last week, makes another week at the end for all the residents of Shushan. And the Jews were invited as well. And he and Haman had a plan. Now, normally when we look at Purim stories and kids' books and Purim plays, we make it out that Achashverosh was foolish and Haman's the bad guy. Right? So this is the first fact checker that we will have seen. That wasn't exactly the case. Right? Achashverosh was almost as big an anti-Semite as Haman, and he was very clever and very shrewd. No fool became king of the ancient world and stayed a king. Possibly inherited the throne for a day or two, but then that was it. No fool stayed in power in the ancient world, right? It's impossibility. He was a very clever man. So why do we sort of make it out that way, right? Because of course we have to understand when the Megillah was written, Achashverosh was still the king, and if we would make it so blatantly obvious Achashverosh's role and how evil he was and how he really wanted to get rid of the Jews as well, that wouldn't have gone well for us. So the Megillah is rather vague. It looks like Haman's the one who misled the king to a certain extent. And then, of course, we have all the Midrashim. We have the Torah Shabbat Peh, the oral Torah, our oral tradition that fills in all the details for us. So that's what happened. He was celebrating that the Jews, well, he thought, obviously it wasn't the truth, but he thought the Jews are going to remain in exile forever under his control. And there will never be a Beis Mikdash. That's what he wanted to celebrate. Okay. Now, his wife Vashti was a true granddaughter of Nebuchadnezzar, and she was pretty much as big an anti-Semite as all of them. Just want to mention there's a difference between a Haman anti-Semite and a Achashverosh, King Achashverosh anti-Semite. So Haman was from Amalek. What's the difference? We see as much as Achashverosh hated the Jews, and he was happy for Haman, God forbid, to kill us all. And when Haman offered to pay him money to kill us all, he was happy. Keep the money. You're doing me a favor. That's how big an anti-Semite Achashverosh was. But when it suited him, when later on at the end of the story, he feels Haman is his enemy, and it's Mordechai and Esther who are his friends. Now, they're the ones who are going to support him politically. And while Haman was trying to undermine him, or at least that's what he thought. When it comes to that point, he's happy to switch sides. Now I'll be nice to the Jews. When it suits me, I'll be nice. That's a regular anti-Semite, right? There's been plenty of anti-Semites throughout history, and sometimes they can be appeased, and sometimes they can be bribed, and sometimes you can make them afraid, whatever happens to be, and they back off. But then there's Haman is the Amalek anti-Semite. The Amalek is it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's in my best interest to be nice. It doesn't matter if they're going to defeat me. It doesn't matter anything, as long as you get some Jews. And although we can't say for sure, for certain, who is an Amalek, but if you look at someone like Hitler as an example, look at the point at the point towards the end of the war, where instead of sending trains to the front, and he possibly could have turned it around and still won. Instead, he took the trains away from the front to send more Jews. No, we'll lose, doesn't matter, as long as you get more Jews. That's an Amalek mentality. And just since we're mentioning him, Hitler and the Amalek mentality, it's again not speaking about every individual of Germanic descent, but there's a famous story that the Franz Joseph, right? He was the emperor of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, and he came visited Jerusalem. And a lot of Jews in Jerusalem went out of their way to get Austrian citizenship, because the Kaiser, he gave a degree of protection against the Turks. And on the surface, he was good to the Jews. And so when he came, everyone was very excited, and they came out to greet him. And most of the Jewish leaders, rabbinic leadership, went out to greet and to say a blessing on the king. Right? How often do you get to say the special blessing that's on a king? There's a special blessing that we say when we meet an earthly king, when we see one. And Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld was the unofficial chief rabbi of Jerusalem, Yerushalayim. He did not go out. Okay, so people understood he doesn't want to go out. He doesn't want to take time from his learning. Maybe he doesn't have an interest in seeing this king. But to say the bracha, a once in a lifetime opportunity. How often do you get to say this bracha? Go, say the bracha. So we told them that he has a Messiah. He has a tradition from his teachers. His teacher was the Chassam Sofer, who had a tradition from his teachers, that the Germanic people are descended from Amalek. Right? This was not long before the First World War. This story happened, and we see that history seems to have proven him correct. So that's an Amalek anti-Semite. There's no. It doesn't matter if it suits me. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what's going to be negative ramifications for me. That makes no difference as long as we get Jews. God forbid. That's Amalek. So that was Haman. But Haman Achashverosh made this feast to celebrate. But Haman was more into it than Achashverosh. Achashverosh was a little bit afraid. Achashverosh's fear was, well, we thought we knew the 70 years before. Belshazzar made his party, and look what happened to him. The God of the Jews punished him. What if I'm also wrong? So Haman gave Achashverosh advice. Told him like this: what you have to do is make the Jews turn away from Hashem. When they turn away from Hashem, they lose their divine protection. And so the whole party, the extra week at the end to invite all the residents of Shushan, was really one plot to undermine the Jews and their Judaism. So the point was to make the Jewish people eat and drink things that weren't kosher, God forbid. And how do you do that? Well, you can't force them, because we know in halacha, no one is responsible if they're coerced, if they're forced. So the whole idea was to make this party, make everything available. They had kosher food. Mordechai was forced to be the mashgiach, right? It was under his hashgacha. There was the top quality kosher was available there. But so was everything else. And because of this, although Mordechai wasn't aware of the plot per se, but he understood that was the motivation. And he told all the people not to go to this party. And you can imagine at the time, Mordechai is telling everyone to stay away from the king's party, and the response of the people is, you Haredi parasite, who do you think you are? It's people like you who create anti-Semitism because you're not interacting with the government and all the things. We know best. Right? And of course, the whole decree of Haman was only able to happen because the Jewish people went. So the Jewish people went. Many people went. Some people listened to Mordechai, Baruch Hashem, but many people went. And unfortunately, a sizable percentage of the people who did go, once they were there, they fell into the trap. A few glasses of wine, and then all kinds of things all of a sudden become permissible. That's what happened. Okay. Of course, we all know the famous part of the story at the feast.
Wait, you used to have the rule: when something is impermissible, What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So you go to the
Right.
party, it's going to stay at the party and finish.
That's right. Except that if he only would have had it in Vegas instead of Shushan, it would have worked.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it didn't. Okay. Not that I've been to Vegas, but I'm told they have kosher fried chicken in Vegas.
Have a whole bunch of Chabad centers.
I don't know if that's a reason to go, but that's what they say. Okay. All right. Anyway, at the party, of course, unfortunately, you see, you have to understand, we have when we have certain parties, it's called the Suda. On Shabbos, it's called the Suda. Even our Purim, it's a Suda's Purim. When we have a bris, a wedding, a bar mitzvah, we have a Suda. What's a Suda? A Suda is a celebrational, a meal of celebration. But yes, we might have l'chaim, but a Suda is the eating is the main thing. And you might also drink. What Achshverosh had was a mishta. A mishta is the purpose of the party is to drink. But in order to keep the drinking going, there's also some eating. Right? It's a different type of party. Different type of party. So at this party, the alcohol had an effect. And Achshverosh starts bragging that his queen is the most beautiful woman in the world. And I'm not going to detail the story to be inappropriate, God forbid, but I just wanted to be to show what type of people we're dealing with. These people, although they are royalty, and sometimes we have this conception, this romantic conception that royalty are so wonderful and sweet and different things, but they were low life people, morally and everything. And people said to him, okay, if your wife is the most beautiful, prove it. So he says, I will. So he orders a decree that Vashti should come dressed in the royal crown, which means only wearing the royal crown and nothing else. So he was going to bring his wife to public with thousands of people to show her wearing only the royal crown. And he was happy to do that. That was the type of person he was. Now it comes to Vashti, she would have been happy to go. And that shows the type of person she was. She would have been very happy to go and show herself off and show that she's the best. So we see exactly what we're dealing with. But we know that unfortunately what used to happen is she would her beauty treatment was that she would bathe in the blood of Jewish children. She also did other things, terrible things to do. She would take Jewish maids and make them deliberately break Shabbos and different things. But we're talking about, again, a nasty, sick people. So let's leave aside anti-Semitism. Just anyone to take children, to kill children, bathe in the blood. What kind of person is this? So she did this. This is her beauty treatment. She wanted to always be the most beautiful. So midda keneged midda, Hashem punishes the person in the way that they behave or treats them, or works the other way as well, and reward as well. Oh Hashem. But she did all this for her beauty, so Hashem made her beauty go away. So seemingly she got some type of skin rash. Normally to tell the kids she got pimples, but it was some type of outbreak and some type of growth. She didn't grow a tail like a I don't know, like a cat or something like that, but she got some type of growth. But the bottom line is she wasn't able to go and show her beauty anymore. So although she would have, if not for that, she would have happily gone just in the crown, but she wasn't going to go now. So now she has to turn the tables, make it someone else's fault. And she starts insulting the king. You tell him that drunk, my father could drink so much wine and never get drunk, wine for 1,000 men and not be drunk. And he just has a few drinks and he's a babbling fool and he wouldn't even deserve to work in the stables of my father. She starts screaming at him, screaming at the servants. You tell him all those things and I'm not coming. So of course the drunken king, when he hears that, he's not very excited. So he calls all his advisors, and people aren't sure what to do because, if you say, and the Jewish advisors were also called, and the Jewish advisors wisely stayed out of it because it's a lose-lose situation. Wherever you advise him to punish his wife, then when he sobers up, he's not going to be happy. If you don't give advice to punish, well, then you're not giving him the proper honor and glory that's deserving. So it's a lose-lose situation. So they backed down and said, Your Majesty, this is too big a case for us. It's above our pay grade, essentially. And along comes Haman. And at that stage, he was not the prime minister. He was at that stage, he was an advisor, but not such a high ranked. And without being asked, he puts himself forward. And he gave the advice, and Vashti was killed. All right. So the Megillah essentially skips a little bit, and then the king is always looking for a new queen. We know there was he calls all the people. I mean, again, this was a terrible time. We're talking about kids. We're talking give the story of the kids. We say it was a beauty contest and the whole thing he chose, but really, what happened is anyone who was remotely eligible was brought to the palace. Now, some people came willingly. They ran to the palace. The hope of being the queen or being part of the royal harem, was some people came running, but definitely the Jewish girls weren't running, and I'm sure some other people went as well. And what happened is they came to the king. They spent 6 months in preparation. After that, they spent one night with the king, and after that, they were sent to the harem. And unless the king called them specifically by name, they stayed in the harem, and that was it.
1 year.
Sorry?
1 year before the one night. 6 months in this and 6
Yeah,
months
that's
in
right. All right,
that.
6 months in one beauty preparation, 6 months in the other preparation.
No, because
But
the whole idea of why Esther not telling her
yeah,
is so important is because of that.
right. So so you can imagine there was thousands, right? Went over a few years. You can imagine. I don't think he remembered all that many names. So these people, young women, that was it. The night with the king, and they spent the rest of their life essentially in a prison. Right? They never left, and that was it. So Esther, who, by the way, according to Midrash, was 75 years old at the time. 75 years old at the time. Also, we're told she had her skin was somewhat greenish. I don't think she was green like a cartoon character, but she had some type of greenish hue to her skin. So she was not the young, attractive person that's normally depicted in the stories. But it was miraculous. What happened was, whoever saw her, whatever image of beauty that they had in their mind, that's what they saw. So you can imagine there'd be a room of different nobles, and they come from all different countries where people have different colors of skin, and maybe people are taller, people are shorter. They have all different societal norms of what's considered beautiful. And each one's looking at this one person, and they're all seeing a different picture. They're all seeing what in their mind is the most beautiful thing they could imagine. That's what they saw. So when she was kidnapped from her home to go to the palace, Mordechai told her not to tell anyone that she's Jewish. He had some type of intuition, whether it was a prophecy or his wisdom, whatever it was, that somehow she's going to end up being the queen. and he saw how the king gets angry at his queens, and he didn't want that he should take it out on the people as well. So she's chosen. She's chosen to be the queen. And she doesn't tell the king who her people are. Okay? So the king somehow, so Mordechai ends up in the conversation, and Mordechai advises him, if you wanted to tell who her people are, you want to get information, you have to make her jealous. So you should do this whole competition to find who the queen is all over again. Let's take a new batch. Right? Now, Mordechai's hope was the king would find someone else and leave Esther alone. But the king, but officially gave the advice for the to make her jealous, and so there was another competition, and it was during this time that the king's servants, this big son and Sarish, they were the ones that look out, provide all the needs for these girls. Now all of a sudden they're working hard again. Finally found the queen. Life settled back down to normal, and now they're working like crazy again. And they were getting upset, and they decided they want to poison the king. So they start plotting, and we all, I think everyone, most people familiar with the story, that Mordechai was at the king's gate. That's where the advisors were, and they're discussing the plan in their own language, right? In Tarshish. And because Mordechai was a member of the Sanhedrin, he was able to know all 70 languages. Just by the way, I just want to, again, it's a bit of a myth that every member of the Sanhedrin has to know all 70 languages. I mean, you're going to need to need 23, but, and probably in those days people did. But Sanhedrin, the idea is that when it comes to capital case, that they shouldn't hear from a translator. It should be they hear the person directly. Okay, so at least understand, and you have to have at least one person in the Sanhedrin who speaks it fluently, that he can lead the questioning and ask the questions. And again, so that won't be through a translator, won't be any misunderstandings, and the rest of the Beis Din has to understand. So he understood what they were plotting. He tells Esther. Esther tells the king. The plot is discovered. Big son Serge executed, and it goes into the Royal Chronicles that Mordechai saved the king, and he didn't ask for any reward, and that's that part of the story. Okay, and one of the things we see here, by the way, and it's one of the messages of the Megillah, is that each part of the story is its own like little mini story. You know, it's and seemingly unrelated. It's only at the end it starts to unravel, and you see how every little piece of the story is interconnected and created each other piece. A little after this, Haman becomes the second to the king. Okay, again, often we say prime minister, but it was perhaps a little bit more than that. Came second to the king. And one of the things that is decreed is that everyone has to bow down to the king. So now we'll go back to a pre-Purim story incident. So before Achashverosh was king, before he was king, what happened was Haman and Mordechai were not necessarily, they were advised in the court, but not necessarily such high-ranking officers. And they went on a certain mission, and when they were coming back, they had to travel through a desert. And Haman was a bit of a glutton, and he drank all his water very quickly. And Mordechai rationed his. At a certain point, Haman ran out of water, and Mordechai had water. Haman asked him to share. Now, Mordechai was concerned that if he shares, there's not going to be enough water for either of them to survive, right? And although we have a halacha, well, probably doesn't apply to an Amalek person, but if it was Jews, let's say, we have a halacha that we have to, if someone doesn't have, we have to share, we have to help them to survive. But if it's a situation where if you share, both are going to die, there's not going to be enough, then you come first. And how much more so when it was Haman was the other person. By the way, there's been no questions today. Well, any questions? Don't be shy. Don't be shy. I don't think I want to listen to me speak for an hour straight, so I'm not sure that anyone else does.
Tell that thing with the water again.
What I just said now, if there's not enough,
No, what was the situation? How did they end up with this water being rationed?
because they had to travel back through a desert, and they got a little bit lost. Whatever it was, it took longer than they expected, and Haman was guzzling his water down, and Mordechai rationed his water, only took a little bit at a time, and so Haman ran out,
Two
and
people alone.
they had other. Look, they were traveling on behalf of the court. It's quite possible that other people. They say there was. I mean,
They were the two generals. They had each
yeah,
one
they
had
they
their
were the ones in
own.
charge. They were the ones in
Yeah, they had,
charge. But I got to tell you, in the midrash that I saw, it doesn't say, right? In the okay, I was going to say in the kids' book it goes, but I don't think that's a proof. So we'll leave it aside. But somehow it ended up that the two of them, one Mordechai had water and he didn't. Haman didn't.
You know,
So
I
Haman
think
at a
you also
certain
have the Mayam Loes also has a lot on this, and I believe it's
yes,
in there too.
could be.
which
So
name of the medrash that's on this?
well, so if we look at the Maimonides, for example, so in English that's the Torah anthology. So
Right.
that'll has that the Maimonides culls from hundreds of works and puts them all together. Because without getting too sidetracked, but if you use Midrash Rabbah as an example, which is the largest body of Midrash. So if you're looking for an explanation of a verse in Midrash Rabbah, it's almost impossible to find. I mean, today you can do searches, electronic searches, and there's books that have an index. But if you just had the Midrash Rabbah itself,
The
it's almost
Oitzer
impossible to find.
HaMedrashim.
Right. But it's also why? Because the way it works is like this. Midrash Rabbah, again, not every piece, but very often the way it works is it'll be, let's say, this week's Pasha, Kisism, and it'll start quoting verses. It could be from any book of Tanakh, and it gives some type of explanation connecting these verses or something, a common theme. And with that common theme, it then explains an idea in this Pasha. So if you're looking for a explanation of a pasuk in Shir Shirim, it's just as likely it's in this week's Pasha being as part of the explanation as it is to be in Shir Shirim. So it's very, very difficult to find things. As I said, there's been books published, different things that give some type of index. But the beauty of Maim Lois, which in English is the Torah anthology, is that he culled from hundreds or thousands of works, and he put it all in order of the Pesukim, all in order of the verses. It makes like a complete storyline.
So this is Mayam Lois on the
Yeah.
Megillah.
Well, also on the Megillah. So it was originally written in Ladino, right? It was but the original author, he did it on Chumash and the five Megillas. Today it's available in all the Tanakh, but other people later made in the same style. But the original author, I don't recall his name at the moment, and because I wasn't expecting to speak about it, to mention it,
Cooley.
but yeah, that's it.
Cooley.
So he made on the five books of the Torah and the five Megillas. So
and all the rest is Aryeh Kaplan in English. by Maznayim. It's a beautiful 40
Yeah, that's the Torah
volume
anthology. It's
set.
translated into English. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'm not
it's all available. So
if I'm
that's
not
probably the
mistaken,
best place to look something in.
if I'm not
It's the best
mistaken, I
place.
think that the original rabbi didn't make it to the end of the 5 books.
That's possible. That's
Possibly if it
possible.
could be, but it was definitely the bulk. If it
No,
didn't,
he
I mean,
definitely passed early. It was a terrible.
yeah.
Yeah. No, the whole. If
So
you
I don't
want
know.
all of the whole set, is 40 volumes.
Yeah.
If you
I
want
have
just Chamisha Chumshei Torah, I think it's 10 or 20. I forget.
Yeah. Well, it depends. They've it's an anthology out on the English, but they've just re typeset the Mumlays. They put in the kudas and punctuation and
Ah,
I've got
so
about
it's
half of it.
sorry.
I've got about half of the set.
Okay. Yeah, that's they're good. They're very, very good. Very, very good. So so the water. So at that point, Haman says, I'll sell you. I'll sell myself to you as a slave for the water. Fine. So they didn't have parchment available to make a contract. He carved it into the bottom of his shoe, into Mordechai's shoe. The deed sale. Not that Mordechai was a malicious person that wanted to own everyone in the royal court as a slave, but he understood that Haman's a dangerous guy, and if he's going to save him, which he was in two minds about, and in hindsight, it seems it was a mistake. At least you want to have some degree of control over him. Not that really helped all that much later on. But so back to the Purim story, when the decree came to bow down, so one of the justifications that Mordechai could give when Haman would come to him and demand that he bows down, he showed in the bottom of the shoe. And there was nothing Haman could really do about it. So that's what happened. Now, just want to also point out here, there's not necessarily a problem with bowing towards a person. Right? Depends what type of bowing we're talking about. But many cultures, and as was the culture at the time, bowed to people as a sign of respect. You see in many Asian cultures today still, people don't shake hands, they bow. And if someone's bowing as a greeting, a sign of respect, a person can definitely bow. The bowing, prostrating oneself, totally flat on the floor, maybe a person can't do that. But regular bowing a person can do. The issue with Haman was that A, he made himself a bit of a deity, and B, he wore as some type of idol on a necklace. So bowing to him was not just bowing to, I'm sure when Mordechai went in to see the king to give advice, he bowed when he went in. The issue was again, when we simplify the story for children, often in many of the books, we often say, Mordechai says, I'm a Jew, I don't bow to humans. Right? There's been plenty of Jews who halakhically correctly have bowed to different humans throughout history as a sign of respect, and that's not necessarily a problem. The issue over here was it was bound to an idol. That was the issue. Now, going back to what we said before, the same way people at the time of the party were blaming anti-Semitism on Mordechai. So on the surface, even though Haman was a Malik and he hated Jews anyway, and he wanted to get Jews anyway, but on the surface, the straw that broke the camel's back was that this Mordechai, who refused to bow to him, he wanted to destroy him and his people. So again, you can imagine what people are saying. That rabbi who doesn't understand anything. Maybe he knows his holy books, but he doesn't understand politics and he doesn't understand the way the world works. He doesn't understand business. That Haredi parasite, all he did is he's got Haman to kill us. course, at the end of the story, we see it's all part of Hashem's plan, and Mordechai certainly did the right thing. But that's how it goes. And this is not my thoughts of what people said. That's what people did say. That's it's a sad worldview that many people have. Right. So Haman, so Amalek, one of the things that Amalek, their whole belief is that everything has to be it's by chance. There's the opposite of divine providence. And that's why I particularly chose the date with a pur, right? That's where the word Purim comes from. 1 pur, 2 Purim. You cast lots for the month, and then for the day in the month. So it should all be random, right? That was his beliefs. So that's setting the date. Now we're only a quarter way through the story, or not even halfway, so we should probably, and we're probably going to run out of time of the story. I just wanted to
we're doing this. We're gonna have the sun stop for 5 more minutes so you can finish your story.
we
Okay.
could. I did want to share this
Whoever wants to leave can leave. No?
video, maybe. All right.
And
So we'll
watch the
keep going
video
then.
later. Right.
All right.
Finish the story.
We'll go through the story. Okay, we'll keep going then. Okay.
Thank
By
you.
popular demand. Popular demand.
Popular vocal
Okay.
demand.
Okay. So Haman comes to Achashverosh and he asks for permission and he offers him money. Says, I'm willing to pay you, right? Because at the end of the day, if you get rid of a whole nation spread throughout the kingdom, there's gonna be a loss in taxes. I'll pay you the money. He offered a huge amount of money, billions of dollars, the equivalent of. And Achashverosh says, do it for free. You do me a favor. One of the reasons, we're reading Parshat Kisisa the Shabbos, and we're talking about the half shekel. So one of the ideas, or one of the benefits, or maybe is a better word, of behind this mitzvah, when it came to Haman offering his silver coins, Hashem said, "My people gave the silver coins first." He's referring to this half shekel coin that's in this week's parsha, and we superseded him. We came first, so therefore ours won. That's this. And the decree is sent out. There's decrees written out, and the king has given Haman his royal seal. And the rule in Persia was that once a decree is sealed with this royal seal, it can never be undone. Can never be undone. It's assuming that's the end. There's nothing to be done. It goes out to all the nations. The secret got out. Officially, the decree came out that on the 13th of Adar, everyone has to go and kill a certain people. But they didn't say who. There was like another, it was going to come out later. But the way it works is Haman told one person, or one of Haman's sons actually told one person, who then told one person, who only told one person, right? Who went to one person. It's a big secret. Don't tell anyone. Who just told one person. And literally within a day of the decree being sent out, the whole Shushan knew. Well, almost whole Shushan. Esther didn't know. She was in the palace. She was in her place. I just want to mention 2 things about Esther living in the palace that I forgot to mention before. We see that she had 7 maids, 7 young maids. So when she came to the palace, the people who came for the beauty contest, for lack of a better word, keep it polite, they could ask her anything they wanted. So she asked her a few things. One of the things was her 7 maids. So the Persians did not have a 7-day week. So what she organized is she had her 7 maids, and they would come in rotation, one after the other. And that helped her keep track of what day of the week it was. She knew when a certain one came, that was Friday, she's got ready for Shabbos. Next day is Shabbos. It also helped her conceal her Judaism, because the one who came on Friday only ever saw her on Fridays. And she sees her light candles towards the evening. Well, maybe she does that every day. She didn't know any different. The one who came on Shabbos, who sees how she behaved on Shabbos, she only ever saw on Shabbos. So maybe, that's what that's what she does every day. She didn't know any different. So it also helped preserve her secret. The other thing is, she said she was vegetarian. That's how she avoided, kashrus issues. So she could have her own diet to her beauty treatment. And she ate a lot of seeds, I don't know if it was actually sunflower seeds or different things like that, but that's one of the reasons that many Jews have accustomed to eat, like sunflower seeds. It's one of the reasons for that, the tradition of the old Hamantaschen poppy seeds, things like that. So many people have accustomed to eat some type of seeds on Purim in commemoration of that. But back to the point of the story we're up to. Servants come and tell Esther that that Mordechai is outside the king's gate in sackcloth. So she sends fresh clothes, and the messenger goes to Mordechai, comes back to Esther, and says that to tell us what happened, what Mordechai's found out, that the Jewish people, the annihilation is being threatened, the decrees against everyone, shows her the decree, and he's not taking off the sackcloth. And they have a whole conversation backwards and forwards. There's this servant Chasach going backwards and forwards. We'll speak about him in a minute. And backwards and forwards. And the bottom line of the conversation is that she needs to go to the king and intercede on the Jewish people's behalf. At first, she's afraid to go. She's afraid to go. She says, there's a rule that anyone who goes to the king's throne without being summoned, unless the king puts out his scepter, that's it, they die. And she says that he hasn't called in over 30 days. So chances are he's going to call soon. Remember, now this, at the moment, we're talking about, this is the 13th of Nisan. And the decree is the 13th of Adar. So 11 months later. So her argument is, we've got 11 months. He'll call me soon. Let's not go. And Mordechai says, you need to go. So she asks, okay, if that's the case, then her and her servants are going to fast the 3 days, and all the Jewish people should fast 3 days as well, to give her merit when they go. Just point out that the last of the 3 days was the first night and first day of Pesach. So they canceled the Seder that year, to fast. See how serious it was. Now, we see in the story, this Chasach is going backwards and forwards, and then it's not Chasach anymore. So what happened? This Chasach, according to the Midrash, seemingly was the prophet Daniel, who was an elderly gentleman at the time, would have been quite elderly. But whoever it was, Haman noticed that this fellow was going backwards and forwards between Mordechai and Esther. And so he grabbed him, and he was going to kill him. But before he killed him, he asked him if he has any last requests. So he says, yes, he wants to whisper it in his ear. So he leans down, and he bit a piece of Haman's ear off before he was executed. And, that's where the story, Haman's funny shaped ears comes from, right? It probably originally wasn't that different, but and then was only for a few days. You only lived a few days after that, but that's what happened. So they fast.
Hey, Trump got shot and his ear doesn't look different either. You lose a piece of ear, no?
That's it. Well, he's got his hair to make up for it. That's okay. So after the 3 days, Esther goes to see the king. Now, when she tells Mordechai she's going to go, she says, okay, she'll go. And if she's lost, she's lost. She says, if I'm lost, I'll be, if I'm gone, I'll be gone. Now, on a simple reading, that means if the king decides not to stretch out the scepter, and therefore she's executed, she'll be executed, but it's more than that. Till now, so Esther was actually married to Mordechai. Okay? Esther was actually married to Mordechai. And she was taken away, and she never went to the king willingly. She was always forced. So halachically, she was a rape victim. And someone who's forced, they're not held responsible for what happens. Is not their fault. Someone who's forced, they're forced. So there was no responsibility there. And in theory, if she would be able to, she could go back to her husband. Right? Someone who commits adultery, a married woman who commits adultery, God forbid, she's not able to be married to her husband anymore. They have to be divorced. She can't be with her husband. But a rape victim is not the case, because it's not adultery. It's not. She was duress. She's forced. This would have been the first time she ever went to the king willingly. That she initiated and she went. And for her, it was a dilemma, because here she's being told that this is the way to save the Jewish people. But if she does that, she now loses her husband. She loses herself. She loses her husband because she's now gone to the king willingly. And on the other hand, this is one of the reasons she wanted to wait till the king summons her. But at this point, she says, I'll go. And if I'm lost, I'm lost. In other words, I'll give up my future. I'll give up what I want for the sake of the Jewish people. And there was this tremendous self-sacrifice, one of the things that gave her the merit to be able to be a player in this miracle. So she goes to the king, and the king asks her, what's your request? Up to half the kingdom, which, by the way, up to half the kingdom meant I won't build the base of Mikdash, but anything else. Right? I won't allow them to build the temple. So she saw at that time, she felt the king's not ready. So she says, I'd like to invite you and Haman to a party. Okay. She makes a party the next day. Now there's a private party, just the queen and the king. And Haman's invited. And obviously Haman fills $1 million. He goes home. We'll come back to him at a moment. But kings in the ancient world usually die by assassination. As a matter of fact, Achashverosh was assassinated eventually after the whole Purim story, and by his own son, actually. David, yes.
If she goes voluntarily, does that automatically mean she's going to be with him in an intimate way?
Well, that's why it's if I'm lost, I'm lost. But in other words, but she's gone to him. And yeah. So he was very paranoid. Now, not necessarily, perhaps paranoid is not the right word, because paranoid normally means when there's not a real reason to be concerned. People had to get you. But here he was rightfully so. Right? The kings in the ancient world, that's usually how they became not the king, was being assassinated, usually by someone in their own family or the inner circle. And you trust no one. That's how you survive. So he was a suspicious person, maybe better than paranoid. He's a very suspicious person. And what's Haman doing there? It started to bother him. In the meantime, Haman goes home and he's happy as can be. He's in the king's party. He now, on the way home, passes Mordechai. Mordechai doesn't bow down. and it eats at his ego. Okay, he's the second to the king. The whole world has to bow down to him. He's been invited to the king queen's private parties, but this one Jew doesn't bow down to him. It's like he's got nothing. So he goes home, he calls all his family and advisors, and he asks them what he should do. And they advise him that they should hang Mordechai. So they start building on the spot this incredibly high 50 amos. 50 amos, right? An amos about 1.5 feet. So 75 feet approximately. All gallows. And they finish it that night, but it's in the middle of the night, and the king couldn't sleep that night. The king is it's bothering him. Something's going on here. Things aren't right. Hashem gave him this uneasy feeling. And he asks his attendant to read from him the book of Chronicles, of his Chronicles. So the attendant opens up the page at random. It's a story of Mordechai saving the king. Now, this person who was reading it was one of Haman's sons, and he did not want to read that story. So he turns a whole bunch of pages, and yet it's a story of Mordechai saving the king's life. So he quickly turns a bunch of more pages, and still it's a story of Mordechai saving the king's life. And the king runs out of patience, says, just read what's there already. So he has to read him the story. You know, people make the joke, if he turned all these pages and it was still the same page, it must have been like an art scroll. Like the Gemaras, you know, that was. But anyway, so he read the story, and the king asked him, what reward did he have? No reward. So he starts thinking to himself, if someone saved me and didn't get rewarded, why would they want to save me again? But the story was happy. It was good. It was a happy story, happy ending. He fell asleep. In his sleep, he has a nightmare. Shem gives him a nightmare that Haman tries to kill him in the middle of the night. He wakes up startled, and just then, someone comes into his inner court, and he asks the guards, who is it? It's Haman. And the king started to think this is too suspicious. He's just had a dream that Haman came in the middle of the night to assassinate him, and here's Haman. So he calls him in, and he asks him, what if the king wants to honor someone? How should he honor him?
Also,
Right?
he asks who goes to the king's garden at 3:00 in the morning.
Right. That's why he's getting so suspicious. Come in the middle of the night when he's just had this dream. Now, next fatal mistake that Haman made is that he thinks, who else would the king want to honor other than him? So he gives him advice. The person you want to honor, they should wear the king's crown, wear the king's robe, should go on the king's horse, and he should be led through the city, and the highest office in the kingdom should lead them horse, announcing this is what should be done to a man the king wants to honor. So again, Achashverosh is already suspicious. Why is Haman come to his parties? Had this nightmare. Haman tried to kill him. Has this all of a sudden Haman shows up in the middle of the night. What's he doing there? And now he hears Haman with his own mouth saying that he would like to wear the king's crown, the king's robe, and go on the king's horse. So this is totally turning Achashverosh against Haman. He says, right, and this is what should be done to Mordechai. Now, if you look in the Megillah, it says it should be done to Mordechai, the Jew who sits at the king's gate. So the Midrash fills in the details. He says to him, this is what you should do to Mordechai. So you can imagine Haman, first of all, the shock is not him. Second of all, it's Mordechai, the guy he hates. So he starts, sorry, what Mordechai? There's thousands of people called Mordechai in the kingdom. I don't know any Mordechai. So he tells him Mordechai, the Jew. He says, oh, well, I think there's lots of Jews, Mordechai, right? He says, the one who sits at the king's right. Okay. So he takes him through the city, through the town. I mean, there's whole conversations that Mordechai humiliates him a little bit, but the king, Haman's family, when they hear how someone is being honored, they also presume it's their father. And in those days, they, again, in the kids' books is a garbage can, but in those days we have to understand they didn't have plumbing. So everyone had a chair with a bucket where they took care of their needs. So Haman's daughter takes the bucket, and when she sees the person leading the horse, who she presumes is Mordechai, she pours it out all over his head. And then Haman looks up, and she sees it's her father. And in her shock, she thinks she's in for it so badly, she jumps and suicides. That's the end of her.
This should have been a movie.
Yeah.
Oh, this should have been a movie.
Still
Well,
can be.
unfortunately, they did make movies, but they didn't make it properly. They never put the midrashim different, so it's
Right.
right,
Still can be.
right. So it's I'm gonna keep going. It's time. Someone needs to go. Don't be afraid to go. But we'll go for a few more minutes. And if those who want to stay, welcome to stay.
Baruch Hashem. Thank you.
So then what happened was, all of a sudden it's time for the party number 2. So the servants come to pick up Haman, and he's covered in what got poured out of the bucket, and he doesn't have time to change. They bring him into the party. So this is not recorded anywhere, but I can just picture the conversation, right? He comes in and he says, "Oh, Haman, my good friend, come sit next to me," and then actually sit over there. But I don't know. Probably it didn't happen because probably the king sat separate, whatever. But just in my imagination, that's how it happened. Right. So this time, when the king says, "What's your request?" So Esther tells him, "My request is the life of me and my people." She says, "If we were just sold into slavery, I wouldn't bother the king. I wouldn't want the king's loss. It's not worth my personal, but the life of my people." And the king is furious. Someone wants to kill my queen, kill the people of my queen. Who is this? And he says, "It's him. It's Haman, that person right there." And the king storms out in furious, and he goes out to the garden. The first thing is he thinks to himself, this garden, it's meant to relax me. What happened last time I was in this garden? At this point, this place in the garden, hey, that's when Vashti got killed. And that was Haman too. Who does he think he is? And over then he notices some of his big trees are gone. This massive forest he has in his garden. And a servant shows up. He says, "What happened to the trees?" And he says, "Well, Haman cut them down in the middle of the night." And look, see, and he points to Haman's, the 75 feet high gallows, right? He's made a gallows in his property. And the king's in shock, first of all, that he's chopped down his trees. But second of all, why would you need a 75-foot gallows? And again, the suspicious king is thinking he wants to hang me on it. Why else would he need such a big? He goes back in. Meanwhile, while he's had this has happened outside, inside, Haman is pleading his case to the queen. "I didn't know you were Jewish." And just at the moment that the king walks back into the room, a malach, we'll say angel for lack of a better translation, but a spiritual entity, causes Haman to slip, and he falls on Queen Esther just as the king walks in. And now he's even more furious. "You're going to try and kill my queen while I'm standing right here in the palace? Arrest him." So he's arrested on the spot. Now Haman was very cunning and sly, and he probably could have talked his way out of it once the king calmed down. But another servant, again, there's a midrash, there's possibly a malach in the sky, but leave it aside, there was plenty of servants there who were quite happy to get rid of Haman and get a promotion themselves. I mean, mix in, actually, that was when they said, "Look at the gallows." So He was only upset about the trees being chopped down by Haman. Now they showed him the gallows. So he said, hang him on the gallows right now. So Haman was executed, and his estate was given to Esther. Seemingly everything is all good. Of course, the decree can't be undone. So Mordechai asked for to be a new decree to get sent out, that the Jews should arm themselves and defend themselves. Another right to defend themselves. And then what happened is most people didn't attack the Jews, even though there was a command to, from the first decree, because A, they saw the second decree. B, Mordechai is now the prime minister. They see the queen is Jewish. That's Esther. It wasn't, again, most anti-Semites, when they know it's not in their best interest, they're going to get killed or something, or they're going to make the king unhappy, they'll just back down. It was only the real anti-Semites, the Malik, the real, who actually got involved in that day. And there were tens of thousands, it's a rough number, approximately 75,000 people were killed throughout the kingdom on the first day. Some more were killed on the second day in Shushan. These, out of a whole empire, it's not a huge amount, but they were the real anti-Semites. That's the Purim miracle. Just point out one more thing, and again, if anyone needs to go, don't feel obligated to stay. But it was only the next year, the first anniversary, that Purim became Purim for every year. So what changed? So we know on a Yom Tov, the same spiritual energy comes into the world as the first time. Right? The Torah was given on Shavuos, and every year the Torah is given again. And that's why every year there can be new books of Torah published. It's what gives the spiritual power, new insights or new ways of explaining, because we had another giving of the Torah. The energy comes into the world each year. So the first anniversary, they had a party for that year, but that was to be like a thanks to Hashem for the miracle. But then the prophets at the time, were still prophets then, they perceived that the same energy came into the world again, and then they realized this is it. Now this day is now a channel for a certain spiritual energy, and that's when they made the Yom Tov Purim for all years. So it's a very spiritually powerful day. This is the hidden miracles. This is the true kindness of Hashem. You see sometimes little kids. I guess we're all at the stage of grandkids at this stage more than kids. But it's they make a cake when they're young. Now, who made the cake? Their mother made the cake. They made the mess, but they feel like they made the cake. I made the cake all by myself, right? And the parent allows them to feel that way, because part of the development, the parent steps back and is really doing everything. Really, the parent did everything, but in the background, because that's the love. It's not about me getting the credit and for every step. I want my children to develop and to grow and feel that they can accomplish something. And so sometimes the hidden miracles are the greatest miracles. That's this true love, where Hashem is in the background. Yes, orchestrating everything, but we're an active partner, or at least we feel we're an active partner in everything. So it's a very, very powerful day. And it's, yes, we celebrate and eat, drink, and be merry, but we also need to daven properly that day. We need to learn something. We have to try and connect to the spirituality as well. Yes, David.
I forget the details, but there's a famous story that connects this to the trial at Nuremberg.
Yes. That was the video I was going to show, actually, but it's about 20 minutes, so I'm not going to.
What are you not going to do? Send me the link.
Let me send the link.
Send it to me.
I actually closed it, but I'll reopen it quickly.
So the detail, the thing has to do with the trial at Nuremberg, and if I'm not mistaken,
yes, I'm gonna send to you. There's I mean, it's something that people have been aware of since it happened. It's not a new thing, but this fellow made I've seen quite a few different discussions about it, but I think this one is the best. This one is the best. So I'm just going to I'll send the link in the chat, and people can watch it on time.
If you copy it before you close.
Just sent that. Really worthwhile watching.
I just want to tell it outside to tell it outside.
There's too much detail. He actually shows it, and he shows each letter, how it goes, and it's very, very well explained. So I think it's like 12 minutes, and it'll take 12 minutes to explain it properly.
11:09.
11:09. Okay, I was close.
There you go.
So does everyone have the link? They took the link already?
I
don't
got
want to
it.
close for people who want to take the link have taken it.
I don't know anybody else. If anybody loses it, I have it. So you can...
All right. So wish everyone.
Thank you.
If you're still
my Purim
fasting, it should be
already.
easy. The rest of it.
Oh,
You should have a wonderful, joyous, spiritually uplifting Purim, and a wonderful Shabbos. It's a Thursday. I don't feel so funny saying good Shabbos now.
Right.
You're Rabbi. I was looking for you on Sunday, actually.
Yeah, my apologies. My apologies. Since you mentioned it, for all the people in Florida, so I was actually in Florida. Went to look at a job. I'm actually going to move to Florida. That's where I was on Sunday.
Oh,
yes, nowhere near where anyone else is.
Oy.
It's like an hour from Tallahassee, like near the border of Alabama. But it's so if we're giving out links,
Are they really that short on places where you don't have a shliach for a Jew?
Well, it's not necessarily. Well, that's part of it, but it's more than that. It's more than that. We're going to open a new yeshiva. It's I'll send you the link of the article. Hang on, it's already giving links.
Nice. Please, thank you.
And I did not write it. I actually feel a bit embarrassed that they made the whole article. I think about me more than the school, but that is
fine. There'll be other articles.
What's
To have a chance to let the yeshiva get more credit.
What's the name of the city you're moving to?
It's not a city. It's a little. So it's going to be in a place called Doror Acres. It's about 30 Jewish families on 300 acres.
It's a parking lot.
Very nice. Very
and in the middle
nice.
is going to be yeshiva.
Very nice. Wow. Wow. I know Mashallah should just continue to grow.
And so those are looking for places to vacation. You got a new place to go.
Shkaya.
If I have my second child, go to yeshiva there.
Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You can still, you can always sponsor a child. That's not hard.
Yeah, that would be good. Please do.
Right?
Yeah.
Warm to everybody.
Please do. Thank you.
David, everybody be well. Have a great Yontif.